Welcome inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, where, as you can see behind us, Student Appreciation Day just wrapped up here at Ohio State, giving us an opportunity to watch a little over an hour of Ohio State football practice, Buckeyes scrimmaging against each other today. And of course, the number one thing that people are going to want to know about coming out of today is the quarterbacks. How is that competition going? I'd say it was a pretty even split of first-team reps today between Lincoln Kienholz and Julian Sayin. Tavien St. Clair taking third-team reps, but I'll couch this with saying I remember doing this video a year ago today, and I remember saying at that time, I would have picked Devin Brown to be Ohio State's starting quarterback because Will Howard had struggled most of the times we had seen him in the spring. We obviously know what ultimately happened there. Will Howard, with a fantastic season for the Buckeyes, ultimately leading them to a national championship. But with that being said, if I was just going off today, I would pick Lincoln Kienholz to be Ohio State's starting quarterback right now. Not saying that's how it will ultimately end up, but there's kind of been the rumblings that maybe Julian has not had the best spring. I would not say that he had the best day out here today. I think Lincoln had some of the better throws of the day. I think in particular, one deep ball he had that was an absolute dime to Carnell Tate, the standout throw of the day. And I think with Lincoln having another year of experience, it just felt to me like Lincoln was in a little bit more control out there. It felt like he had a little bit more command of what he was doing out there, whereas it felt to me like Julian was just a little bit off today.
Yeah, command is a good way to put it. And that kind of throw to Carnell, beautiful go ball up the sideline. It ends up being a 45-yard touchdown. Carnell had half a step on his defender, and it was right where it needed to be. But it wasn't the only impressive throw. I think Lincoln had a really nice throw over the middle on a slant route to Phillip Bell, the freshman. He had a few other nice ones mixed in there. It wasn't a perfect day for Lincoln. He also underthrew a couple balls that I saw, but on the whole, I think it's definitely fair to say he was the most impressive of the quarterbacks today. And I would actually even put Tavien St. Clair second in that grouping. Tavien had some really nice flashes, especially early in the practice. Didn't have that consistency as the practice went on. Was clearly a freshman still learning, but Julian missed on some throws today, threw an interception. I think there's clear strides that he needs to take to claim the starting job ultimately for Ohio State. And look, I think if anything else, it lends credence to, at least at this point in the offseason, this is a real competition between Julian and Lincoln. I think if this is what's been consistently shown behind the scenes, obviously this is just one practice we get to watch, but if this is what's consistently shown behind the scenes, I think Lincoln has a real shot to ultimately win the job this fall.
And of course, we'll have another big opportunity to watch the quarterbacks and all these guys next week at the spring game. And I think, it'll be really telling, at least for us, do we see Julian make some of those strides next week? He struggled in the spring game last year. Will he have a better showing in the spring game this year? I think that would go a long way for him, certainly for Lincoln to kind of keep building some momentum as he tries to keep himself at the forefront of that competition. And yeah, like you said, Tavien was only with the third team today, and so it's pretty clear that right now it's a Lincoln versus Julian battle in terms of who they're evaluating to be that starting quarterback. But I think one of the plays of the day early into practice, Tavien, he spins away from a rusher, throws a beautiful ball down the field to David Adolph. There were a few times today where you could really see Tavien's athleticism on display, his ability to evade rushers and extend plays, and I think that's one of the things that gives him a lot of potential. So, I think Tavien would still have to come a long way to have a chance to be the starting quarterback this year, but I think you can certainly see those flashes of his potential to be a star quarterback for Ohio State in the future. Going away from the quarterbacks, there were several guys that stood out to me today. I think one of the biggest ones was Quincy Porter, and it sounded like after practice he lost his black stripe, which would make him the first of this year's freshmen to lose his black stripe, which is certainly a notable achievement. And he was a guy, you heard, Austin Edwards on the PA calling his name all day. He made a lot of plays, one of them a really nice diving catch on a throw from Lincoln Kienholz, and he looks like a guy, we don't have the same expectations for Quincy Porter that we did for Jeremiah Smith a year ago as a freshman, but there's been positive things said about him all spring, and looking at what he did out here today, he looks like a guy who has the potential to help Ohio State as a freshman.
Yeah, and when Jeremiah was coming in last year, I talked a lot about the polish that he had coming from Florida and playing in that league. Coming out of New Jersey, I think Quincy Porter has some of that, even in the Catholic League that he played in was really difficult. He, I think, is impressive with his size and the refinement of his game the way he uses his size to make catches. Like, he was walling off defenders on a couple of catches. We saw that diving one you mentioned. The way he's able to weaponize his length and have that big catch radius, I think, because it's one thing to be tall, it's another thing to actually be a good tall receiver, like a Marvin Harrison Jr. was, like a Jeremiah Smith is. I think Quincy Porter has that potential, and he's really flashed it today. As the starters go, receiver-wise, I think Brandon Ennis had a fantastic outing today. Had a really nice post route. I think Lincoln's probably second best throw he made, besides the go ball to Carnell. He hit Brandon Ennis on a really nice post route down the field. Brandon had made a big gain on that play. There were other ways they were getting him involved in the offense, coming across the field with some underneath throws, things of that nature. Phillip Bell also really stood out to me as far as another freshman goes. Not as much as Quincy, but they were mixing him in with the 2s and the 3s, getting him some of those reps and getting him some looks, a lot of underneath passes to him. For me, though, I think out of everyone, the biggest standout might have been Bo Jackson today. There was a run that Bo Jackson had, one of the first plays after we got out here on the field. Bo broke 2 or 3 tackles running up the middle on a play and picked up about 11 yards. Carson Hinsman's walking past me, and he says, "Oh, Bo like that for real." That's like, yes. And watching him today, there was a shotgun toss they did to him coming on the outside. He picked up about 24 yards on it, and just outrunning the defenders. You can see the burst. You can see the willpower. You can see how he always keeps his legs churning. To me, Bo Jackson was a really impressive standout today. And it maybe a guy that could challenge for some carries come fall.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about James Peoples and C.J. Donaldson. Both of them have looked really good this spring. But, yeah, the way Bo is running today, I think he's a guy to watch, too. Can he make that a 3-man running back rotation rather than just a 2-man running back rotation? If he keeps practicing like he did today, I think he's got a chance. We flip it over to the other side of the ball. I think probably the biggest standout on defense to me was Payton Pierce, another guy who we've been hearing a lot of good things about all spring long. Mm-hmm. James Laurinaitis really talking him up. He was getting a lot of first-team reps out there today. Sonny Styles, one of the veterans who's getting some limited reps, coming off of playing a ton last year, and so Payton Pierce was out there a lot with the ones, and he made multiple pass breakups. You can see why James Laurinaitis keeps talking him up as a guy who is going to be one of those top 3 linebackers this year and is going to play a lot of football for the Buckeyes this season.
Yeah, sticking with the defense to me too in that front group, Kayden McDonald was really good today. Had one of his classic goal line stuffs. We saw him make a few of those even during Ohio State's national championship run last year. That was kind of his way to get involved in the defense last season in those goal line short yardage packages, but he pressured a throw, I believe it was from Julian Sayin. He looped around and hit him, basically forced an incompletion, or not hit him because I don't think the quarterbacks were live at that point, but he pressured him, forced an incompletion, had a PBU that he batted down, was constantly getting in the backfield and making chaos. Also defensively, I thought Aaron Scott had a really good day in coverage. He was paired up against Jeremiah Smith a lot of the time. He had a PBU working against Jeremiah. There were a couple of other plays where Jeremiah may have made the catch, but Aaron was right there. And, I mean, you're talking about the best receiver in the country, right? He made Jeremiah work for it, is what I'm saying. And a lot of corners aren't capable of making Jeremiah work for it. But he was right there in coverage. He had another couple good reps against other receivers. To me, Aaron Scott was one of the more impressive defensive backs today. And then Jermaine Matthews also with an interception. So I think the cornerback room really looking strong in this practice for Ohio State.
I agree completely. Tavien Sanchez made a couple plays as well. He had a breakup against Jeremiah Smith. Lorenzo Styles Jr., he almost had an interception with a really nice break on a ball. I believe he was going up against Brandon Ennis in coverage. And so I think you're seeing the depth of that room. Aaron Scott, Tavien Sanchez, both mixing in a lot with IGB and Jermaine Matthews at that first-team defense today. And Lorenzo taking a lot of the reps there at nickel. But, it seems like both those 5 guys, that seems to be kind of at top of that cornerback group. And I thought they looked really strong. Anything else that, coming out of here that's, really on top of your mind?
For me, again, it's the cornerbacks and it's the linebackers with Payton Pierce and just how good he looked today, the depth of that. Like, you have that really strong top 3 grouping. And so the one thing I was bummed we didn't get to see today that I was hoping to see was pass rush one-on-ones. It was all team today, which is great for takeaways. But it's hard to get a lot of D-line, O-line assessment in that. So if that part of it's missing a little bit outside of my Kayden McDonald praise. But yeah, I think we pretty much covered everyone that stood out to me. Yeah, a really good day of watching Ohio State practice. It was just great to be out here and see it.
Yeah, and a lot of mixing and matching today, like particularly on the offensive line. It was not like the same 5 guys were out there for the first team. I think at all 5 spots they had multiple guys rolling into the first team offense. So, not one of those days you're going to come out of here and go, okay, this is your first team, this is your second team. They were doing a lot of rolling on the offensive line, a lot of rolling at wide receiver, defense, everything. So giving a lot of guys opportunities to get those first team reps and really kind of continue that evaluation process, as Ohio State is now 11 practices into the spring, 4 more to go next week, culminating with the spring game at Ohio Stadium 1 week from today. Lots more coverage from Student Appreciation Day to come at 11warriors.com. So catch up with us over there. For now, he's Andy Anders. I'm Dan Hope. This has been another episode of Press Coverage.